Johann Zarco has a comeback date. What he does not have is a doctor's signature. Castrol Honda LCR published a statement confirming that their rider returns at Aragon after 3 months out. And sitting inside that same statement is the one line that decides whether any of it happens. The return is subject to passing the mandatory medical evaluation at the circuit. That evaluation has not taken place. It takes place next Thursday. So the team has announced the outcome, and the doctors have not reached one yet. Why would a team publish a comeback it cannot promise? And who is that announcement actually aimed at? This is not a rider missing a couple of rounds. Zarco went down at turn 1 at the first restart in Catalunya on the 17th of May. Since then, the paddock has been to Mugello, Balaton Park, Brno, Assen, the Saxon Ring and Silverstone without him. Cal Crutchlow rode that Honda for 6 weekends and scored nothing, so LCR has spent 6 rounds without one of its 2 riders, a 40-year-old former racer keeping that seat warm and a manufacturer paying for all of it. The pressure sitting on next Thursday is not really about a knee. It is about how much longer this can be allowed to run. Here is what that examination actually gates. Zarco travels to Aragon, presents himself to the Grand Prix medical staff, and they decide whether he is fit to ride. Pass, and he is on track Friday morning. Fail, and the announcement everybody shared this week becomes a press release about a race he watched. Even a pass is staged. Thursday buys Friday morning, then a second check decides the weekend. And it is not a formality. It is a physical assessment run by people who do not work for LCR. And what he is walking in there with is worse than the headline version. The public story has been a knee ligament injury. The actual damage was the anterior and posterior cruciate ligaments, the medial meniscus, a small fibular fracture near the ankle, and a deep burn on the same leg from being dragged through gravel with a Ducati pinning it. He and his medical team chose not to operate. That decision bought him time. It also means those ligaments were left to settle on their own, which is exactly the kind of recovery that looks fine walking and behaves differently under load. Which is what makes the timing strange. September was the plan. Misano was the target. Nobody was running late. So why move it forward? The official version is that recovery went better than expected, and on paper, it did. Zarco started riding a supermoto in Andorra, then stepped up to a Honda CBR 1000RR-R to prepare. That progression is real, and it is also the problem. A supermoto is not a MotoGP bike. A road-going superbike is not a MotoGP bike, and the track he has chosen runs anti-clockwise. 10 left-handers against 7 rights. Hard enough on that side that Michelin builds a rear tyre with a reinforced left shoulder just for this weekend. His injury is the left leg. There is also something waiting for him on track. The FIM stewards ruled the Catalunya crash was his responsibility and handed him a double long lap penalty to be served at his next Grand Prix. So a first race back after 3 months out, on a knee cleared days earlier, begins with 2 trips through the long lap loop. And, oh yeah, there is one more part of this that nobody put in a headline. Cal Crutchlow is travelling to Aragon anyway, not as a guest, not as a tester, as the backup in case Zarco fails on Thursday. The team announcing this comeback has quietly built a plan for the comeback not happening, and told a replacement to pack for a weekend that officially belongs to somebody else. Now listen to what Zarco himself said. I'm pretty happy with how the knee is progressing and recovering. I feel good enough to jump back on the MotoGP bike, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to racing. Sit with that verb. He feels good enough. That is a rider's self-assessment, not a medical finding. And it is the entire foundation this announcement is standing on. The doctors have said nothing. The rider has said everything. Lucio Cecchinello framed it the way a team principal has to. We are very happy to see Johann's recovery progressing so well and to welcome him back sooner than initially expected. Sooner than initially expected. That is the message, and it is aimed at a very specific room because ahead of schedule is the best news LCR has had out of that garage since May, and he has lived a version of this decision before. Talking about Catalunya afterwards, Zarco was blunt about lining up for that restart. "I'm mad at myself for taking that second start." He had already been hit by debris from an earlier crash. His foot was already purple. He went out anyway, and it cost him 3 months. So, who is this announcement really for? Zarco signed a deal running to the end of 2027, and when he signed it, he became the first rider on the grid committed to the new technical rules era on an agreement held directly with HRC rather than with the satellite team. That was supposed to be security. Then his leg went inside another man's rear wheel in May, and within weeks the reporting turned. By June, the story had become that Zarco was now unlikely to race for LCR in 2027 at all, and that Honda might prefer to move him into a test rider role, where the experience keeps its value and the body stops being a liability. He turned 36 in July, and that number is doing more work here than the knee is. Set that against the calendar, and the whole thing snaps into focus. A rider fighting that suggestion cannot afford to be a name on a medical bulletin in September. He has to be a rider on a bike in August, on track, on a timing screen, in front of the only people whose opinion decides whether a signed contract gets honoured or quietly renegotiated. People thought this was a medical story that produced a comeback. It is a career story that produced an announcement. The knee is what gets examined on Thursday. It was never what the press release was about. Let us be fair about what this is not. LCR has not lied to anyone. Every condition is stated in plain language, the medical is named, the date is named, and if Zarco fails on Thursday, nobody can claim they were misled. That is not the problem. The problem is the order. A medical decision announced as news sounds like this. The rider was examined, the rider was cleared, the team confirms his return. What LCR published is that sequence in reverse. The return was confirmed first. The examination comes after. Which means the announcement is not reporting a medical outcome. It is applying pressure to one. And it pays either way. If Zarco passes, the story becomes a rider who beat his own timeline, which is precisely the story a man defending a 2027 seat needs told about him. If he fails, the story becomes a rider who wanted it badly enough to try, and Crutchlow is already in the paddock to cover the hole. There is no version of next Thursday where publishing this was a bad idea for anyone except the person whose knee is on the table. That is what this actually was. Not a doctor's verdict dressed up as news. News dressed up as a doctor's verdict. So the next time a team tells you a rider is back, ask what was really being announced and who needed to hear it first. Would you line up at Aragon on a knee that only you have signed off? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.